There's a lot of news. I'll give you some headlines and I'll get to my major topic to begin the program. We have satellite imagery showing that we have collected at least 4 and possibly as many as 7 of our B-2 Spirit stealth bombers at Diego Garcia, along with the KC-135 Stratotankers necessary to refuel them for long flights. That's a message to Iran that Donald Trump is very serious about their two choices. They can open the doors and denuclearize, or we can blow open the doors and destroy the facilities. I don't think it's an accident that this story is out there. I don't think it's an accident that they allowed the B-2s to be photographed. It is clearly a message to the mullahs that Donald Trump is serious. Also want to let you know that last night, the Knesset in Israel passed a judicial reform bill. I'm going to talk about it later in the program with Josh Kroshauer. It seems common sense to me. The world did not end. It does not go into effect until after the next Knesset election. I'll tell you about the particulars. But there were lots of demonstrations for 2.5 years. And when you look at the small print, you say, that seems like a normal thing to me. I also want you to know that there's a story in the Wall Street Journal that made my eyebrows go way up. Its headline is U.S. prosecutors probe tip about the timing of the Pfizer vaccine. It begins. Soon after President Trump won the presidential election in November, it's not after he won, it's after he lost the presidential election in November, British drug maker GSK brought an unusual claim to the attention of federal prosecutors in Manhattan. A senior GSK scientist who formerly worked at rival Pfizer had told GSK colleagues that Pfizer delayed announcing the success of its COVID vaccine in 2020 until after the 2020 election. If that's true, and I don't know that it's true, I know it's on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, that's going to be a major scandal. And not just because it would have impacted the election, had there been a COVID vaccine available before the vote in 2020, but because every delay in the rollout meant people got the COVID vaccine later, which means there's going to be a class action suit to end all class action suits, if in fact it's true. I'll follow that. We also have another Wall Street Journal story about Medicaid fraud. Billions and billions in Medicaid fraud, because it turns out people were enrolled in Medicaid in 2 states at once, which means double the payment. Follow that. RFK Jr. at HHS announced he's cutting 10,000 jobs, and there are lots of other things. But I'm going to focus my opening today on yesterday's testimony by the head of National Public Radio, Catherine Mayer. Now, if you missed yesterday's show, you missed some of the clips. I want to replay them for you. This is her conversation with Representative Brandon Gill, cut number 2.
Thank you, Chairwoman Green, and I apologize. I'm getting over a cold, so I'm losing my voice here. Ms. Maher, I want to start with you. Just generally, would you say you generally agree or disagree with the following statement? The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles?
I would not say I agree with that, sir.
You're not. That's good to hear. It's interesting because a lot of your thinking, as expressed by your public statements, is deeply infused with economic and cultural Marxism. Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half-decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I'd no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't? You tweeted something to that effect. You said, I grew up feeling superior. How white of me. Why did you tweet that?
I think I was probably reflecting on what it was to grow up in an environment where I had lots of advantages.
It sounds like you're saying that white people feel superior.
I don't believe that anybody feels that way, sir. I was just reflecting on my own experiences.
Do you think that white people should pay reparations?
I have never said that, sir.
Yes, you did. You said it in January of 2020. You tweeted, yes, the North, yes, all of us, yes, America, Yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt. Yes, reparations. Yes, on this day.
I don't believe that was a reference to fiscal reparations, sir.
What kind of reparations was it a reference to?
I think it was just a reference to the idea that we all owe much to the people who came before us.
That's a bizarre way to frame what you tweeted. Okay, how much reparations have you personally paid?
Sir, I don't believe that I've ever paid reparations.
Okay, it's just for everybody else.
I'm not asking anyone
Seems
to pay
to be what you're
reparations, sir.
suggesting.
And then she goes on. Mr. Gill is very good at this, by the way, because he lets the witness talk. Everyone could take a lesson from Brendan Gill. Cut number 3.
Do you believe that looting is morally wrong?
I believe that looting is illegal, and I refer to it as counterproductive. I think it should be prosecuted.
Do you believe
to the
it's
full extent of the
morally
law.
wrong, though?
Of course.
Of course. Then why did you refer to it as counterproductive? It's a very different way to describe it.
It is both morally wrong and counterproductive, as well as being
You
illegal.
tweeted, it's hard to be mad about protests in reference to the BLM protests, not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression. You didn't condemn the looting. You said that it was counterproductive. NPR also promoted a book called In Defense of Looting. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I'm unfamiliar with that book, sir, and I don't believe that was at my
You
time at
tweeted
NPR.
that you read that book, but
I don't believe that I did read that book, sir.
do you think that a few years ago NPR educated America about, quote, the whole community of genderqueer dinosaur enthusiasts? Do you think that that's an appropriate use of tax dollars?
I was not at NPR at the time, sir.
That's not the question, though. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of our tax dollars?
I think our tax dollars that we use are to be able to provide a wide range of
So I'll
perspectives.
take that as a yes. You do believe that that's appropriate. Your health advisor at NPR also stated in an interview that, quote, fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat. Would you like to explain how fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat? That's an editorial at NPR.
I am not familiar with the editorial, and I don't believe that was published during my
So
time.
it goes on
It's
like
called
this.
diet
I want
culture.
to make a point. Catherine Marr is not an outlier. Catherine Marr is a hardcore leftist, but the leadership at NPR, like the reporters at NPR, like the editors at NPR, reflect the Democratic Party that it serves. You know, I don't listen to NPR because it is so hard left. But I want you, she's not an outlier. She is the perfect representative of where the Democratic Party has gone. It's lost its mind. And you know that, and I know that. Bernie Sanders and AOC and the squad are the leaders of the Democratic Party. Kamala Harris is the leader of the Democratic Party. The normies are gone. Catherine Marr is the leader of the Democratic Party. Now, she's indistinguishable from every other leader of the Democratic Party. I'm talking about her ideology. Mr. Gill is 31 years old. He knows how to examine this. He knows to use their words. Believe them when they write things. Believe them when they say things. Believe them when they go on MSNBC and say crazy stuff. Believe them. The Democratic Party is not the Democratic Party that I've been covering I've been in this business since 1990. And it changed after Clinton. It began to slide away not long after 9/11. It might have been collective trauma. But when they began with Bush lied, people died, it got worse from there. Donald Trump completely unhinged them. Twice, 3 times actually. Joe Biden was not the president. It was a regency. We don't know who that president was. We don't know who was making the choices. But it was run by the hard left. And I just want to be very blunt with you. What you heard from Marr yesterday, and there's a lot more, and I'll play a lot of it today, is not out of the norm of the new Democratic Party. The new Democratic Party is Howard Zinn's party. It is. They were raised on Howard Zinn. They believe Howard Zinn. They believe it all. They are not normal Democrats. Some of them are trying to hang on. There are a few normies left, but they are not what you get. You go listen to the Pod Bros. You go listen to, for example, Ben Rhodes, the Metternich of MSNBC. I don't do it. It's not good for your mental health. But I want you to know what happened yesterday was the drapes were pulled back. And we got full frontal Democratic Party mainstream thinking, which is hard left. And she had to lie about it. She had to lie about, oh, I don't remember that. I don't know what I was thinking about. I don't know if I read that book. There's a lot of evasion. There's a lot of lies. But what you need to realize is that's who they are. And if you're listening to NPR, you have to turn it off. And if you're a Republican lawmaker, you have to defund it and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and PBS. And everybody listening to this program has got to realize the choices you make in what you consume in the news world, you're either subsidizing that worldview or you're saying no to that worldview. And I earnestly hope you begin to say no to that worldview because it is wrong, it is dangerous, it will be the ruin of America because it is, as Mr. Gill pointedly made the reference, culturally and economically Marxist. Joined by Michael Duncan, one of the hosts of the Ruthless podcast, and I try and talk to one of the hosts every week just to make sure all of you out there have liked and followed the Ruthless podcast so that you're smarter than you were last week because it is that good. Michael, welcome. It's Thursday. It's my happy day because when I get done working, I get to listen to your Thursday edition. Is it worth it today? Have you already laid it down?
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. We cover the whole Signal Gate fake controversy, that the Democrats are obsessed with on Capitol Hill right now. It's delightful. We laugh our way through it. And again, Hugh, you're always so kind to promote the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I want the show. I think the show is going to change politics because it actually teaches Republicans how to do this. You taught Brandon Gill. I don't know if he listens to Ruthless, but did you watch him eviscerate Catherine Murray yesterday from NPR?
Yeah, he put on an absolute clinic. I think what struck me the most out of that whole exchange, and I've seen a ton of viral clips banging around on X, I've never seen a CEO know less about what her own company is doing. It's really remarkable.
But I want to play one clip for our audience so we have a common denominator for people who may have missed the hearings. Let's play clip number 6. This isn't with Mr. Gill. It's with Mr. William Timmons, who represents South Carolina's 4th Congressional District. Catherine Mayer, of course, the CEO of NPR. Cut number 6.
You're a rabid progressive. And do you not think it's a problem that your political leanings make it seem to the American people that you're not biased and you're not doing your job? Because you agree that your job is to have journalistic integrity, right?
Absolutely, but there is a strong firewall between the newsroom and anything that I
Let's
do.
talk about the newsroom. You have 87 registered Democrats, not a single Republican in your editor board. So, how does that work to give us the perception that you're doing your job of actually delivering unbiased information?
Well, I would agree with you that number is a concern if it is accurate. I do believe that we need to have journalists who represent the full breadth of the American society so that we can report well for all Americans.
Well, I think that you are failing. I realize you've only been there for a year, but I just really think that while it is a small portion of your budget, you very much should expect to restructure your revenue streams because I don't think that NPR is necessarily worth saving.
Michael Duncan, I don't think NPR should get $1. I don't think the Corporation for Public Broadcast should get $1. I used to work for PBS. I don't think PBS should get $1. What do you think?
Zero, which is the same number of Republicans who work, apparently, at NPR.
If we actually set up their funding mechanism, that for every contributor to the Republican Party, we would increase their budget by like $1 million. We might get represented, but it's that bad. Do you think America knows how biased NPR is?
I don't think so. I think it's this insidious thing. You think it's NPR, it's public broadcasting. You pay for it to your taxpayer, and that's the most offensive thing about it. And I understand the woman's only been there a year, and there's a lot of stuff in the past that was, going on there that was pretty bad. But what have you done to change it? That's the question I would love answered. 0 Republicans, 87 editors in the D.C. metro area who are Democrats. What have you done to change it in the last year since you've been there? You've been there a while now. Nobody asked that question, but I'd love to know the answer to that.
For a long time, Steve Inskeep is a radio friend. He comes on. I like Steve. Steve writes good books about Lincoln. He writes good books generally. He's a good historian, very reasonable, takes reasonable position. He's their firewall. He's their public-facing, I'm a reasonable guy. But the reality, the reason I played that, do you think Catherine Maher is representative of the elite of the Democratic Party, or is she an outlier?
I think it's standard fare in media, especially political media in Washington, D.C., unfortunately. And it's especially pronounced at the editor level, I think. John Ashbrook, one of my colleagues on Ruthless, points this out.
The one that likes journos.
Yeah, the one who likes journals. Well, he has to deal with them every day. But I think what he recognizes in talking to these journalists is that one of the most insidious problems about media bias in this country that you as a listener or viewer are probably not familiar with is story selection. You're
Yep.
used to reading something and being like, okay, well, that's a liberal take. But like the unseen thing is the stuff they don't cover because some reporter's trying to track down some information. They take it to an editor and they're like, we don't think that's important to our audience, right? And because their audience is liberal, they're suppressing stories that are interesting, compelling stories about a side of America that doesn't get talked about enough.
And it's attributed to Dan Rather. I've never seen it formally quoted, but it's attributed to him. News is where you look. Every day, people make choices about what they choose to cover. NPR and every other legacy media outlet chooses never to look at some stories that we would like them to look at. Now, when I say she's representative, Michael Duncan, I mean when people vote Democrat, they're actually voting for Catherine Maher to run every agency, not just NPR. They're voting for her and her ideas to dominate D.C. And I don't know that they know, that the American electorate understand how radical the Democrats have become. I didn't really get it because we've been focused on Trump. Do you really get it? You live in the belly of the beast.
Well, I think the American people are getting to see that firsthand thanks to the work of Elon Musk and Doge. This goes far beyond just NPR that gets public funding for left-wing lunacy. I mean, you look at all the stuff that Doge is uncovering across DC with all these liberal NGOs, doing everything from funding trans studies in Tanzania to, helping provide housing for illegal immigrants who Biden's putting on airplanes across the country. I mean, it's a pervasive, insidious part of the nonprofit world in DC is all of this funding through USAID and our government to all these, basically left-wing groups.
I don't want to be a triumphalist, but I think it's shattered. I think Ruthless had a big part in shattering it, as does a lot of other new media. And I don't mean the big pods like Rogan and Theo. I mean, you guys do politics, and I think you've shattered the assumptions about the conservative media being boring and dull and old. You're young and funny and up to speed. Do you think they ever come back to the middle, or are they too far gone?
I think Trump broke them forever. I mean, some of them do get it. Like, the reason why The Daily Show is now back, I don't know if you knew this, but like they brought that show back, is they realize, that you can talk policy and you can talk politics, but one of the highest forms of politics is mockery, is ridicule of your opponent and making fun of them and showing their hypocrisy and all of that sort of stuff. And that's what we do on Ruthless, and I think that's what makes the show successful. But it's easier to make a point when you have that on your side. And the left lost that in Donald Trump. When Donald Trump came on the scene, they got so holier than thou and they got unfunny.
What Brandon Gill borrowed from you guys, Brandon Gill borrowed King of the Hill. He used their own words. He basically played King of the Hill in a hearing setting, and boy, did it defenestrate her. I just want I want every Republican to start doing that, Michael, and I hope you spread the word.
The other thing I love, Hugh, about that clip, and if you watch enough of the ones that are going around, he's having a great time doing it.
Yes.
And she has complete amnesia about all of these tweets she wrote.
What book?
Of course.
What
book?
quote?
What book? I never read that book. Well, you said in this tweet you read it. And you could see the smile sort of cracking on his face. And like, that's the thing. Be a happy warrior. Enjoy it.
I cannot wait to the drive home today because I get my Thursday edition of Ruthless. Do you play King of the Hill today, or was that only on Tuesday?
No, we pause it during Hack Madness. We got the Hack Madness brackets going, and we don't want to influence the voting.
I bow down before Hack Madness. It is wonderful. Well done, special edition. Michael Duncan from Ruthless. If you are not already a subscriber, go and find it on YouTube. Like and subscribe if you wish to opine. One of the reasons I love having Ty Lassiter on is because my friends at his business, and Ty Lassiter is with Key City Capital, and they are a sponsor of my show, keycitycapital.com/Hugh. And I'm an investor in Key City Capital, and I'm obliged by the FCC to tell you that, and that you cannot join the fund in which I joined, and that if you choose to invest with Key City Capital, you've got to be an accredited investor, and you've got to read the prospectus. I've done my due diligence. But the reason I love Ty on is because Americans love real estate. Ty, how are you?
I'm doing great, Hugh. How are you doing this afternoon?
Great. I want to read to you a story that came out not even 3 hours ago. Goldman Sachs did a brand new story on real estate. The analyst notes that in February of this year, total transaction volumes rose 23% over year, up from a decline of 3% year over year in January. This represents an increase of 7% in real estate transactions year over year on a quarter to quarter basis in the first quarter of FY25. Is the market getting that hot that quickly?
It is. It's really and nothing happens overnight. This is like success or like anything else. The results end up looking like something happened overnight, but we started seeing this back in November, and I expected the early parts of this year to really start seeing those results, and we're seeing those quickly. I was on one of our properties in Memphis, actually in the fund that you're in. Yesterday, I got back, and we are already seeing a huge uptick in rent applications. We're seeing an uptick in collections already. We're seeing a strong movement in the marketplace. And for that matter, January and February of 2025 has been our biggest 2 months for capital raise in the last 2.5 years. And so we've got investors excited to be back in the marketplace, specifically in real estate, as they're moving money out of the capital markets and into physical back assets. We've got lenders that are more apt to making loans right now. That is not to be said that I'm looking for loans. We're actually looking to take our lenders out. I want our, as well as our investors, I want our investors seeing cash flow. And right now, for the past 2 years, a lot of that has been going to our lenders. And so we're creating opportunities with our investments by taking the debt out, bringing in more investor capital to own the asset so that we can see cash flow. And then the marketplace is just really moving. One of the markets that is a little bit slower is Florida. Florida, we are not seeing as many home purchases. There's actually more homes on the market than there are buyers right now. That being said, it's a stronger rental market. The rent markets across the United States are exploding. The North, the Northeast, the Far East, and the Midwest, supply is not keeping up with demand right now in the marketplace. We had at just one of our properties in Memphis last week alone, we had 18 new rent applicants, and we only have 6 available units to rent out. And that's the case at our entire portfolio. So right now is a prime opportunity to really jump into real estate as we start seeing that rebound. Don't sit on the sidelines and wait for the rebound to already happen, because if you do, it's going to happen quickly and you're going to miss out on many of the opportunities that we're seeing right now.
Ty, if you ever open an Ohio property only fund, I'll come back in again. I'm diversified. I have real estate, but when I tell people diversify into real estate, I don't mean go out and buy a rental house. You don't want that headache. I've been there and done that. You want to diversify into something like Key City Capital that buys properties and manages them. Minimum investment is $100,000, right, Ty?
That's correct. That's
All right,
correct.
so I want my audience to know, full disclosure, get the prospectus, find out where you're doing. Have you ever had an Ohio only fund, Ty?
I've had Ohio assets, not an Ohio only fund. Ohio was it's actually my first apartment complex was in Ohio and did well with that asset.
Well, I'm telling you, I think you ought to open up a Buckeye fund and just call it that. We'll sell that out immediately. In terms of a new fund, are you opening a new one or are you closing one right now? And there is no guarantee that if you want to invest with Ty, that by the time your money gets there, it's still open. That's happened to a couple of friends of mine.
Both. We are closing one down right now. We have a new one that my legal counsel and myself are in the process of opening. We expect that one to be open into Q2. We are going to take fast action with that one. As I mentioned, we're looking at taking banks out. And so we're going to be doing all cash purchases with that. So that fund will subscribe and sell out quickly as we go in and buy a few assets all cash so that we can see more cash flow to the investors.
KeyCityCapital.com/Hugh. KeyCityCapital.com/Hugh. Get the prospectus, read it. And Ty will talk to you all day long if you call him up and you want to know about the fund that's involved and if you want to know about real estate. Here's my monthly real estate update, comes from Key City Capital, and I appreciate your time, Ty. KeyCityCapital.com/Hugh for more information. Make sure you read the prospectus. Make sure you're an accredited investor. But if you just want information on real estate, Ty will bend your ear for as long as you want your ear bent. The American Legislative Exchange Council can be found at ALEC.org. And if you go to alec.org/u, you can sign up for their weekly newsletter. They're a great sponsor of my program, and Jonathan Williams is my friend. He's their chief economist. He's their CEO. Let me ask you this, Jonathan. In a world where there's a story a day about crazy federal government spending, are the states reacting to that and doing their own doges?
Well, that's a great question, Hugh. Good to be back with you. And it's something that we at ALEC have thought a lot about. And we've created our ALEC Government Efficiency Coalition to meet that need, really, to help coordinate the efforts of our members to look at those spending issues at the state level. This is something for decades that ALEC has worked on. We've seen some impressive gains because at the end of the day, the big difference between the states and DC when it comes to budgeting, as you know well, Hugh, is 49 out of the 50 states have a balanced budget amendment, at least in some type or form. And the feds don't even pass a regular budget, and they haven't for the last couple of decades. And so, yes, we are absolutely looking at that. We've seen over a dozen states now move towards their own DOGE level efforts. And while the dollar amounts obviously are much smaller at the state level than they are in Washington, we all know there's a lot of room to look for waste, fraud, and abuse at the state and local level as well. And that's exactly what we're doing at ALEC.
Now, Jonathan, let's talk about some wins. South Carolina and Mississippi. I want them to be the poster children for excellence this week because they both cut tax rates. Maybe Mississippi did it better than South Carolina did, but let's give gold stars to both of them. What did they do?
Well, yeah, they both deserve gold stars, and so does Georgia for that matter. The Southeastern Conference is not just an impressive football conference, it's an impressive economic competition of what's going on in the southeastern states. We look at South Carolina, it's a proposal so far, Hugh, and this was from the Speaker of the House, though, and he was standing there with the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, so we've seen broad support on both chambers. Governor McMaster is fully supportive of it, and it would take South Carolina's personal income tax rate, which is nearly 6.5 right now, and a huge outlier of a very competitive region where you're competing obviously with zero income tax states like Tennessee and Florida and Texas in the region. North Carolina has been a long winner when it comes to cutting taxes. South Carolina wants to go from a progressive income tax down to a 3.99% flat tax, which would be an amazing victory just in itself based on this proposal. But then, of course, they want to put triggers in place to get that rate down even further towards 2.5%, which, of course, would be one of the lowest of any state that has an income tax today. So South Carolina, a huge proposal this week from the Speaker of the House and Senate leaders.
On your to-do list, I love the state of Maine. I might even move to Maine, except for the fact that they have an inheritance tax of 8%. How many states still have that? It just seems like the appendix of the body politics. It should not be anywhere. Why do states have an inheritance tax?
Well, it's an incredibly economic backwards way of looking at things, right? You're not going to build a wall and keep your residents from leaving the state, especially if they're successful individuals and business owners. They're leaving anyways. You're basically not raising any revenue from these state level death taxes. And there's only about 5 states, Hugh, in the entire country that still have one in existence. You have your states like that you mentioned in Maine, the progressive states, but then also you have a couple of states, even Nebraska still has one on the books, Hugh. I was just out there in Lincoln a couple of weeks ago, and it's a real head scratcher as we've seen all the red states basically try to get rid of theirs. But here's the deal, and a couple of red states still have them. And the reason why is the revenue goes not to the state level, but it goes to the counties and to the local units of government who are fighting for their fiefdoms and saying, revenue source unless we get more state dollars and raise some other state tax to pay for it. So that's the little wrinkle of why
Jonathan, you're an economist. Would you explain to people why it's absolutely inequitable to have a death tax? It's like the third time the money's taxed.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, it's been taxed a couple of times already. It's an unfair tax. You look at polling around taxes, and gas taxes and property taxes and the death tax are the 3 most unpopular types of taxes. And the other thing about it just makes absolutely no sense when it comes to, you're not going to raise any revenue from it long term because, as my friend, former Governor George Allen likes to say, people are not trees. People will move. They will vote with their feet. That's one of the key messages that we say every year in rich states, poor states.
I did not know that Governor Allen said. That's wonderful. Let me go to, on the list of topics you sent me, I have no idea of what a certificate of need law is. But I'm glad that Wyoming repealed it. Would you explain to me what a certificate of need law is?
Well, sure. Happy to talk through that a little bit. I do want to talk about Mississippi as well, because actually their tax reform was probably even more impressive than the others that we've seen this year. They actually, some of you have seen this in the headlines, Mississippi, they voted not only to cut tax rates, but they put triggers in their tax cut that just passed the legislature. I think the governor's signing it maybe today, Hugh, to actually become the 10th state without a personal income tax.
Bravo, Mississippi.
An amazing victory. We've been waiting for years to have the 10th state without an income tax. You know the history on this, Hugh. It's been 40 plus years. Alaska was the only state to have an income tax and then repeal one. And so Mississippi, a state that has struggled mightily with economic growth, especially with the competitiveness of the Southeast region, may be the first one to do it if these triggers take effect.
Oh, that is fabulous. All right, we got a minute left. Tell me about Wyoming and the certificate of need.
Yes, Wyoming with certificate of need. We've seen a movement across the country. This has been led by our Health and Human Services Task Force, really to raise the exposure around these certificate of need laws, which essentially protect the incumbents in the marketplace, in the hospitals, and say you need to go get the approval of the incumbents in the marketplace in order to build a new facility. And so imagine that. You want to compete with an existing hospital, but you have to get their permission in order to go and build a new hospital. I mean, maybe these ideas had some merit back decades ago when they were created. It seems awfully anti-free market and anti-consumer to me when you think about this. And I think that's why we're seeing so many states decide to take this on. We need more access to care. We need more hospitals in rural areas. We shouldn't make it more difficult to build new hospitals in rural areas, you would think. I don't know. I'm just the economist here.
That is the ultimate barrier to entry. And it makes no sense to require a certificate of need for a healthcare facility because the market will out, right, Jonathan? If it's not needed, it ain't going to get built.
Exactly. We've been hearing all about the need for more hospitals in rural areas. All these states expanded Obamacare to get there. They're putting up these barriers. We need to remove these anti-market barriers instead.
Love talking to Jonathan Williams. You'll love his newsletter and Alec's newsletter. All you have to do is go to alec.org/u, ALEC.org/u. Find out the state of the states every week here on The Hugh Hewitt Show. Thank you, Jonathan. I put the fetching Mrs. Hewitt on an airplane today. She's going off to drive from Portland, Oregon, back down to California with her best friend and first cousin. So I'm a bachelor for 5 days. I think if that My PhD Weight Loss is a sponsor of ours, I think the best thing we could add, Dwayne, to My PhD Weight Loss, 864
644
1900, that's
864
644
1900,
is have the cooking spouse leave for a week. What do you think?
That's probably not the best thing to do because unless you've got an extraordinary amount of willpower, you are going to be succumbed by every fast food
No,
place.
actually,
and orange food
I
group.
will roll through the one frozen pizza she brought me. Then I'll eat the Trader Joe chocolate kitties, and then I'll be out of food.
Now, what's
And
that? Now, what's actually on that pizza?
Nothing but cheese.
And what's it mounted on?
I don't know. I don't think it. But look, I'm telling you, I understand that's not on the My PhD Weight Loss, but I'm going to blow through that today, and then I'm too lazy to go shopping. You know I don't go shopping.
Yeah, we know you don't go shopping.
I never go shopping. So basically, no food for 4 days. Don't you think that's a great addition to the My PhD Weight Loss program?
Not necessarily, because you are going to order in. You are.
I never order in. Never.
You've never DoorDashed in your life?
Nope. Don't believe in it. Don't like it. I hope no one ever wants to sponsor me from Uber Eats.
Oh, good
or
Lord, you're
DoorDash.
going to starve.
No, I just don't eat. I don't. I do take my relief factor. My PhD Weight Loss, though, if you want to lose weight the healthy way, not the Hugh Hewitt way, go to My PhD Weight Loss.
Yeah, you don't want to lose it the Hugh Hewitt way.
No, it works. It works. Get a lot of miles in. Don't eat. 864
644
1900. However, do take your relief factor. And why do I do that? Because even though the fetching Mrs. Hewitt is gone, I am feeling better. Did another 12 and a half hours sleep last night. Dwayne, you think I'm better? Does my voice sound better?
Your voice sounds stronger.
Yeah,
after you had...
and I feel better. And I think it's been 3 weeks. Did yours last 3 weeks?
Every bit.
Honest to goodness?
You kept trying to say the first week of this that I'm fine. I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better. And I kept going,
know.
It's at least a month.
Went to bed at 7:30 last night, woke up at 7:30 this morning and felt better. Relief factor. That means tomorrow I'm going up the implacable hill because I'm counting on a continued upward trajectory, and I'm not going to blame Genghis Kate much. I did get it.
You
from
already
Genghis.
did.
I know. We got to destroy the tape so she doesn't feel guilty when she's older. It was Genghis Kate who gave it to me, but I'm better now. She's better now. We're all better now, and I'm going up the implacable hill tomorrow because ReliefFactor.com. I've kept taking it every day, even during the layoff. I got 1 4-miler in this week. I got a 6, 6, and 4 last weekend. Might have gone out a little bit too soon for the recovery business. But ReliefFactor.com, whether you're sick or you're fine, no matter what you're doing, you got to get your exercise. Get ready for the weekend. It's Thursday. It's basically the weekend already for Dwayne. You coming in tomorrow? Probably not. I just tell you, get your Relief Factor and enjoy it. Be ready for the weekend and come right back because I'm going to continue to educate you about NPR when I come back. So you really do have to focus on what happened yesterday. Thank you for listening. You might be listening on the podcast. You might be listening when I'm live. You might be listening late at night. We're 24/7 over at HughHewitt.com. And most of my major interviews are collected at YouTube. I hope you subscribe to it. My YouTube channel, make sure you will get, for example, Michael Duncan from last hour, Selena Zito from this hour. Whenever I do an interview, Harley posts it at my YouTube channel so you don't miss it. I'm returning, though, to a subject I began in the first hour of today's program. Yesterday's testimony by Catherine Marr, the CEO of National Public Radio. It was a revelation for people who don't know much about NPR. Get in your car in the morning, maybe you listen to NPR. You don't realize. It is a hard left propaganda outlet. It has got nothing to do with the news. It's got a lot to do with the news that the Democratic Party wants you to know and the left-wing bias that they inhabit in that world, that they breathe and somehow completely ooze out in every story. And it came through yesterday. And I want to play, just for example, yesterday, the Hunter Biden laptop story, which was suppressed by NPR before Catherine Marr got there, came up yesterday. And so it was easy for her to denounce how they covered that. Cut number 5.
First of all, I do want to say that NPR acknowledges that we were mistaken in failing to cover the Hunter Biden laptop story more aggressively and sooner. Our current editorial leadership.
Wuhan?
We recognize that we were reporting at the time, but we acknowledge that the new CIA evidence is worthy of coverage and have covered it.
Worthy of coverage. Okay, it's just all pablum like that. Here she is talking with Jim Jordan, who's on the subcommittee of DOJ on the House Administrative Committee that is quizzing Catherine Marr. Cut number 7.
Is NPR biased?
Congressman, I have never seen any instance of political bias determining editorial decisions. No.
Well, Mr. Berliner, in his story last year, wrote, in the D.C. area, editorial positions at NPR, he said he found 87 registered Democrats, 0 Republicans. Mr. Berliner, was he lying when he wrote that?
I am not presuming such. I just we don't track that information about our journalists.
87 to 0, and you're not biased?
Congressman, I do not believe we are politically biased. No, we are a nonpartisan organization.
Nonpartisan organization. What's happening to your listeners over the last 5 years? Went up, down, or stayed the same?
It has gone up and down and is now going back up.
I thought 5 years ago it was at 60 million. And you said in your opening statement, I think 43 million.
That's correct.
So 43 million now, and it was at 60 million 5 years ago. I can do some math. That looks like it went down.
And is now going back up.
It's now going back up?
Yes, it is.
How much has it went back up?
It's gone up a couple of millions over the past
years.
Oh,
so you went from 60 million to 41 million. Now you're back up to 43 million.
In a year's time, I'm very proud of that growth, sir.
Okay, you're proud of that growth. Okay. More money for less listeners.
You know what? That is growth, sorta. It's 10. If you're at 41 million and you want to hit 5% growth, what is that? We're going to quiz the Steeler fans with 10% of 41 million, 4 million. What's 5% of 41 million? 2 million. That 5% growth in her 1 year. Is that good or is it bad? When you've dropped off that dramatically, I'd say it's really weak. You know what's happening? America's waking up. And here's the only, if you want to listen to NPR, great. You want to send them money, great. I am in broadcast. I have been broadcast forever. I worked for PBS for 10 years. Listener supported is great. Send them a check, by all means. Get the handbag, get the CD, whatever they're giving away when their annual begging campaign. I did it for 10 years, from 1992 to 2002, Monday through Friday on KCET, the PBS affiliate in LA. It's a hard left place. It was hard left then. Now it's radical. It's just radical. And there is no reason, not a single reason, for a dime of taxpayer money to be going to NPR. But my bigger point is that Catherine Marr is not an outlier. Do you understand that? She is not an outlier. She is the Democratic Party. Can I play cut number 8 here? She's talking with Michael Cloud from Texas 27th Congressional District. Cut number 8.
History, including the thing that I mentioned about lack of reverence for truth, and how reverence for truth, you've even talked about the First Amendment kind of getting in the way of what you want it to get done. And then you're wanting us to believe that NPR is now taking this non-biased approach. I mean, where was the come to Jesus moment for you, I guess, that has turned you around and that we can trust the American taxpayer dollars with your leadership of NPR?
I so appreciate the opportunity to perhaps clarify some things. My talk about truth was really referencing the way that people use truth to refer to belief as opposed to facts. And my encouragement was that we focus on facts. With regards to the First Amendment.
That's not what your comment said. Your comment said that truth was getting in the way of getting things done and that you were prioritizing what you wanted to get done over truth. And that's really unfortunate. I want to go to a different context because you're allowed to have your political opinion. Any news organization should be going after the truth. That's what we want and expect out of news organizations. But certainly a media platform can have whatever opinion it wants in a free society. The question before us today as a committee is whether or not the taxpayers should be forced to pay for this kind of thing.
And he's right. And I am tired of paying for it, and you should be tired of paying for it. And they always say we only get, 1% of our money comes from the taxpayer dollar. In fact, they get a lot of money because they have a money laundering scheme, and that is not a criminal money laundering scheme. A big appropriation goes to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They give it to the member stations. The member stations send the money back to NPR. It's a pretty nifty scheme. It is. It's a pretty nifty scheme. And it's time to end it all. Completely shut it down. If they cannot exist in the marketplace with me and with Mark Levin, and now we've got Charlie Kirk on in the morning, Dennis will be back soon. We got Mike Gallagher on. If they can't compete with us, they can't. And if they can, they can. And if I've never done, I do donor campaigns for like Save the Children and Feed the Poor and Prison Fellowship. I do donor campaigns. They're not donor campaigns for Hugh Hewitt and the Hugh Hewitt Show. Maybe we should do that. Maybe I should be listener supported. I believe in advertising. I believe in sponsors. I believe in earning my own way. But it has become obvious to me that she is not a bug. She is a feature. Now I want to go back to Representative Brandon Gill because he did the number on her that got the most views yesterday. This is cut number 3, Brandon Gill, part 2 of her grilling her on her ex post from a few years ago.
Do you believe that looting is morally wrong?
I believe that looting is illegal, and I refer to it as counterproductive. I think it should be prosecuted.
Do you believe it's morally wrong, though?
Of course.
Of course. Then why did you refer to it as counterproductive? It's a very different way to describe it.
It is both morally wrong and counterproductive, as well as being illegal.
You tweeted, "It's hard to be mad about protests," in reference to the BLM protests, not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression. You didn't condemn the looting. You said that it was counterproductive. NPR also promoted a book called In Defense of Looting. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I'm unfamiliar with that book, sir, and I don't believe that was at my time at NPR.
You tweeted that you read that book, but
I don't believe that I did read that book, sir.
Do you think that a few years ago NPR educated America about, quote, the whole community of genderqueer dinosaur enthusiasts? Do you think that that's an appropriate use of tax dollars?
I was not at NPR at the time, sir.
That's not the question, though. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of our tax dollars?
I think our tax dollars that we use are to be able to provide a wide range of
I'll take that as a yes. You do believe that that's appropriate. Your health advisor at NPR also stated in an interview that, quote, fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat. Would you like to explain how fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat? That's an editorial at NPR.
I am not familiar with the editorial, and I don't believe that was published during my time here.
It's called Diet Culture is Everywhere. Here's how to fight it. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I think any reporting on health is an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars, yes.
And you think that editorializing that fat is not unhealthy is appropriate?
I don't know what that article is, sir, and I'm not familiar with it, so I couldn't say.
Fake news. Do you think that basic accommodations like doorways or seat belts represent, quote, latent fat phobia?
I don't have an opinion.
It's also from NPR. Do you think civility is racist?
No, sir.
No. Your outlet ran an article entitled, quote, When Civility is Used as a Cudgel Against People of Color. That was on All Things Considered. Would you like to explain?
I'm not on the editorial side, sir. I'm not familiar with that story.
That is her all-purpose excuse. The fact of the matter, it was evisceration 101. There should not be one dime in the budget. And in that budget reconciliation package, which is languishing in the Senate, and they've got to get off of their rear ends and get it passed, they should absolutely cut and put it in the budget resolution, not a dime more for public broadcasting in any shape or form anywhere in the country. It should be over. That's the easiest decision to make. It's a failure, all right? It will be a failure if NPR, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or PBS, gets $1 at the end of this process. It is absolutely an anachronistic leftover from the 60s, and it's time to kill it dead. The taxpayer subsidy. If people want to send the money, God bless you. We got a First Amendment in this country. You go right ahead. But not my money, not your money. It's Thursday. That means my friend Selena Zito joins me from Yinzerland. Selena, the baseball season gets underway. Are you at all hopeful for the Pirates?
No, I mean, they break my heart. And they've broken my heart. There was like a little bit in 2013, but it's gone.
Yeah. I was just want to make sure that you've got level expectations with reality.
Yeah,
our friend Carl is always excited in April, and he's always crushed by May. So I just wanted to make sure you're level-headed about that. How about the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh?
Who is it now?
There isn't anyone. There's nobody. It's Russell Wilson went to the Giants. Justin Fields went somewhere. Kenny Pickett's with the Browns. I guess you're drafting a quarterback, but you don't draft till late. I really don't know what you're planning. So you got a pretty dismal sports thing. So let me get serious. I do not know the NPR station in Pittsburgh. Do you know the NPR station in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, WESA.
Ever do any work for them?
No, I mean, they've interviewed me, but when my last book came out, but that's it.
See, in most markets, the local NPR affiliate will have a commentator or two or three or four that will do local commentary. That's never been you?
Oh, no, they would not have me. That station is left of left.
Now, this is the point I'm getting to. I have been playing Catherine Marr's testimony from yesterday. I played it yesterday. I played it today. I talked about it with Michael Duncan from Ruthless. She's not a bug. She's a feature. That's a hard left organization. I just wanted to make, even in Pittsburgh, NPR in Pittsburgh is hard left?
Oh, very much so. And I think they would say that proudly. I mean, I think they would say that proudly.
Okay, so why are we giving them money? I mean, I don't mind hard left outlets. There are lots of hard left outlets in the world. But you and I have been in this business a while. We've written for everyone. We've worked for everyone. I actually worked for PBS for 10 years in L.A. I was their token conservative. But why are we still doing this? NPR is a product of the 60s. Why are we giving them any money?
Well, it makes no sense, right? If it was really good storytelling, right, and very good reporting and brought you something new, I could understand that. But I don't understand why we are funding a news organization, period. I would feel that way if it was a conservative one or down the middle one. It's an antiquated approach, and I don't like. What's the mission statement? Why are we doing it?
I will give them credit. They have superb production values. In other words,
yes.
When they go in and out of break and they play their classical music, they've got people with wonderful pipes. My radio friend, Steve Inskeep, is a fabulous guy and a great writer. I think he's their public-facing normal person. But generally speaking, they're just hard left. And, Pennsylvania is a purple state. It goes both ways. You would think that the public broadcast station in Pittsburgh would reflect Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh might have a lot of Democrats in it, but they're not left-wing Democrats.
Well, the city of Pittsburgh now lives. We have a hard left mayor. We have a hard left county executive. We have Summer Lee as our congresswoman.
Oh, you're right.
But those let's parse that a little bit. Those elections are always decided in a primary, and who shows up in the primary? The hardest left, because we don't have a robust Republican running against any of those entities. So that's why they're hard left. I think all three of them have got their start or were endorsed by the DSA, the Democratic Socialist of America.
Okay, that brings me to my major point. When Catherine Marr testified yesterday, she was revealed to be kind of radical by virtue of what she posted on X when X was Twitter. I don't think she's an outlier. I think the Democratic Party has moved significantly to the left, so much so that John Fetterman seems normal. I mean, John Fetterman is sort of an old school Democrat, and Josh Shapiro's an old school Democrat, but they're it. I don't know many other Democrats who are in their lane, are there?
There's not many. Those are the first two that I can think off the top of my head. There's a couple state legislators, a couple state senators. But even today, I'm writing about this right now. There's a state senator who represents working class Pittsburgh and some of the suburbs where my parents live. And she went on about girls are just as strong and capable and can compete with women. I'm paraphrasing here in sports. Now, that's being captured by an ideology, right? And that's the problem with this party. And if you step outside of it, you're protested or you're ostracized, or you just don't move forward in a general election or in a higher office. And that's the problem with the Fettermans and Shapiros going forward. You can't be normal and go to the next level when running for office.
Now, Governor Shapiro will be up for re-election in 26. Do you expect that he will draw a primary challenger from the left? Because he's awfully normal.
Oh, I mean, I would be surprised if he doesn't.
And if he does, will the normal Democrats turn out and support him? Because he's a strong supporter of Israel. And the DSA is not. And if the DSA is becoming the Democratic Party of Pennsylvania, they're not going to like Josh Shapiro.
No, they're not going to like Josh Shapiro. They don't like Josh Shapiro. They don't like John Fetterman. Could they? I mean, Shapiro would be a formidable person to run against in a primary. I want to see normal Democrats be successful, because that healthy, robust debate between ideas with Republicans is healthy and good for our country. And so I hope that doesn't happen. But everything is within the realm of possibility. I mean, you forget that John Fetterman challenged in a primary a sitting lieutenant governor in 2020 and won.
Because people thought he was farther to the left than he turned out to be, right?
Oh, yeah. He's much more. Look, John Fetterman has always been the bane of the existence of the establishment of the party. He's also the bane of the existence of the far left of the party. He is his own man, always has been, and he's not going to change.
It's going to be very interesting to me. Is there a normal Republican running against Shapiro? I don't follow Pennsylvania politics close enough. I got less than it.
Nobody has announced yet. I
Is
would
there
keep
any?
my eye on Dan Muser, the congressman. I would keep my eye on him. He might be someone that could challenge Shapiro and give him a run for his money for Republican. But I don't know that he gives up his House seat. He's really risen up in within the House leadership, and I don't know that he would give that up.
But to put a period on this, you've never been asked by the NPR station to opine in an editorial fashion on a regular basis.
No.
I rest my case. I rest my case. Selena Zito is like the most normal American in America, and that's why she writes for the Washington Post, the New York Post, the Washington Examiner, and everybody else, and why her books sell, and why her new book, Butler, is going to be a bestseller. Brent Gardner is with the Americans for Prosperity, great sponsor of our program, and Brent keeps an eye from his perch as Senior Vice President at AFP on the budget reconciliation process. Brent, I do not understand why we don't have a bill. And I'd like you to break it down for me. I was listening to the commentary podcast this morning, and they talked all about tariffs, and they said, whatever the Trump plan is, it ain't going to work without the tax cuts. And it's not going to work fast enough for the 2026 election without the tax cuts. So where are the tax cuts?
Well, you're right. This is definitely the top legislative goal to get done this year. And we know how critically important it is for the American people, for American businesses, and for the American economy to get this done. So where are they? We've kind of had a big week. Now with the CR behind us, Congress has come together and I think put together a fairly aggressive but doable schedule to ultimately have a bill up on the week of April 7th. And God, boy, it couldn't come sooner, right?
Well, what are they going to put into it? Is it going to be the slimmed down, skinny Senate bill that doesn't have the tax code, or is it going to be the one big, beautiful bill that the House passed with the tax extensions?
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be the one big, beautiful bill. What's ultimately going to be in it, I think, is some of the work that'll be done here in the next couple of weeks. But it sounds like it's much closer to the House package than the Senate package, which is good. It gives us an opportunity to be able to deal with this quickly because certainly the American people and American business need that certainty to be able to feel the kind of effects that we know we need to after 4 years of Bidenomics and this lagging economy.
If we want to get the economy back that we had before COVID hit, we have to have the same kind of momentum that a tax bill brings. Have they reached a resolution on the SALT deduction? That's the state and local taxes deduction. It does divide the conference, both in the House and the Senate, so there's got to be a compromise in there. Do you know if they found it yet?
I don't know if they've found it yet, Hugh, but I know it's one of a small handful of issues that we still really have to deal with, which is why, as exciting as it is that we found the process going forward, we really need to move on now to talking about some of those issues like SALT, like child tax credits, but never losing the fact and really focusing on the incentive for members to get this done and to find a way to be able to bridge those divides to move forward. But SALT is definitely one of those issues that will have to be dealt with, along with what some of the offsets will be. But I feel like this week, the big news is that there's a productive relationship between the chambers and that there's a lot of optimism, at least amongst leadership and most of the rank and file, that they'll be able to solve these problems.
I will count it as a win if they get it done by, what did you say, April 9th?
Well, the week of April 7th, they expect to have it on the floor and then hopefully have it to the president in May. I think having it before Memorial Day is really critically important, especially given the fact that they've now included the debt ceiling increase as a part of the package. And the X date for when we hit that debt ceiling is as soon as June. So it's got to happen.
That makes a lot of sense. Let me ask you about spending cuts because of yesterday's testimony on the NPR budget. Does the budget reconciliation include instructions to cut and slash everything that we absolutely don't need? And that would include Corporation for Public Broadcasting, NPR, PBS, and a bunch of other things that we can't afford when we're $36 trillion in debt. Is that part of the package?
I certainly hope so. There's a lot of opportunity here to do this. And frankly, from all the discussions that we've had this week with members and with leadership, their goal is to be as aggressive as possible. But at the end of the day, they still have to be able to find a bill with extremely close margins, in particular in the House, to be able to get this done. So we expect those negotiations to happen over the next few weeks, but the goal is to be as aggressive as possible in dealing with some of the spending issues.
I noted that today, Elise Stefanik, who's a wonderful congresswoman from New York, withdrew her nomination to be the ambassador to the UN because we can't afford to lose the vote. What did you read into that, Brent? Because we won by one vote when it got through the House, and we're going to pick up 2 congressmen on April 1st, I think, from Florida. Why do we need Elise Stefanik to stick around? I mean, I wanted her to go to the UN and be a brilliant UN ambassador.
Yeah, she would have been great, Hugh. I think the challenge, though, as you laid out, if you think about some of the issues that divide the caucus, one vote's going to matter not just on the final passage of the bill, but on so many of these issues that are dividing. And so I think ultimately the president and I think Elise, looked at the challenges in front of them and recognized that this is what we're going to need. We're going to need every single vote. It's so critically important, whether it's enough people who are critical of where we are currently on SALT, or whether it's challenges around some of the cuts in the policy decisions that'll have to be made to address spending. Really, they're going to need every vote that they can possibly get.
Brent, we're short on time, but did you happen to see the story on Medicaid this morning in the Wall Street Journal that billions of dollars were wasted because the same patient was signed up in 2 states? Can you believe that?
I can, unfortunately. I've been in this game long enough to see the amount of waste and fraud and abuse in Washington. But what the great news about that story is for me, and it's on the front page of the Wall Street Journal and so many other papers, is that we're finally finding it, addressing it, dealing with it.
I hope you are right. I hope they put that into their cost savings so that they can make the tax cuts deeper and easier to achieve, along with the border funding, the defense spending, and the energy deregulation. Brent Gardner of AFP, good to see you, my friend. I love the Americans for Prosperity there, and they're working every day to get this bill over the goal line. Just checking the market update brought to you by American Federal. Markets are closed for the day. American Federal never closes. You can call AmericanFederal.com anytime you want. 1-800-221-7694. If nobody's there, they'll get right back to you. 800-221-7694. Nick Grovich and his team at AmericanFederal.com buy and sell precious metals. And many of you are diversifying into it. Those of you who got in 6 months ago are very happy. Gold closed today. Well, not closed. It never closed. It's the international market. Right now, it's at $3,068 an ounce, up 1.5% today. So I'm not surprised. Tariff talk is dominating headlines today. Tariffs make markets uneasy. Whenever markets get uneasy, they go down a little bit. Like the Dow went down 0.37% today. The S&P went down 0.33% today. And the NASDAQ went down 0.53% today. And gold went up 1.5%. That's a lot. $3,068 an ounce. Now, when you call American Federal at 1-800-221-7694, that's not the price they're going to guarantee you. They're not going to guarantee you any price. They're going to say, send us your money. We'll get your money. Then we'll talk about the spot price, and here's our commission. And the commission depends on how much you are buying or selling. The more you buy, the lower the commission. You can buy silver, you can buy gold, you can buy platinum. And if you're part of that very small percentage of Americans who like to deal in collectibles, they got that down too. But if you're just an average Joe or Jane and you want to put some gold away in the safety deposit box against unforeseen events, against hyperinflation, or just because most financial advisors in the world recommend diversification, do it with American Federal. I've been after them for years to be my sponsor. I'm so glad they are, because all they do is what I just told. They buy and they sell gold. They're really good. Also want to remind you, it's Lent. It's Lent for another 3 weeks. I think it was the fourth Sunday in Lent at Mass this weekend. And during Lent, a lot of you adopt different practices of self-sacrifice, mortification, whatever it is, additional prayer, good works. Here's a good work, Food for the Poor. Food for the Poor has been at this for 40 plus years. They serve the lost and the least in the Caribbean and Central America. Started out just a few priests, then they added in a few pastors, then they added in good-hearted people throughout the region, then they added in American volunteers, then they added in a lot of American money. Not a lot, but enough to feed tens of thousands of kids. If you want to feed one child for a year, it costs $100. Give a listen to Paul Jacobs, one of the spokespeople for Food for the Poor, tell you about your donation.
Working with Food for the Poor means that you're working with a network of pastors and local ministries, partners that are vetted on the ground in El Salvador, that are making sure that they are doing the work. There's no government involvement in El Salvador that is going to basically get in the way of your compassionate giving and those children that are in need.
Now, Food for the Poor, very good at what they do, very good overhead, very good delivery system. You can count on it. You don't have to invent the wheel. The wheel's been invented by Food for the Poor. Simply go to HughHewitt.com. You'll find the banner at the top. It says, Feed Their Future. You can also text my name, Hewitt, Hewitt, to 51555. Hewitt to 51555. or you can do it the old-fashioned way and call them, 855-359-4673. Now, I drill on this during Lent, and the reason is that at that time of the year, people are inclined to think about what they haven't done and what they might do for people who have less than they do. And that pretty much means everyone who's not an American. And they're working in El Salvador, and El Salvador has really turned that country around. But please be as generous as you can. If you can help out 10 kids and send $1,000, God bless you. Your money goes to a good purpose. It keeps kids fed who otherwise would not be fed. Speaking of Central America, Marco Rubio was meeting with the president of Guyana, and he repeated again, and I want you to hear him repeat it again, what our policy is on visa and green card holders, cut number 12.
We revoked her visa. It's an F1 visa, I believe. We revoked it, and here's why. And I'll say it again. I said it everywhere. Let me be abundantly clear, okay? If you go apply for a visa right now, anywhere in the world, let me just send this message out. If you apply for a visa to enter the United States and be a student, and you tell us that the reason why you're coming to the United States is not just because you want to write op-eds, but because you want to participate in movements that are involved in doing things like vandalizing universities, harassing students, taking over buildings, creating a ruckus, we're not going to give you a visa. If you lie to us and get a visa and then enter the United States and with that visa participate in that sort of activity, we're going to take away your visa. And once you've lost your visa, you're no longer legally in the United States, and we have a right, like every country in the world has a right, to remove you from our country. So it's just that simple. I think it's crazy. I think it's stupid for any country in the world to welcome people into their country that are going to go to your universities as visitors. They're visitors. And say, I'm going to your universities to start a riot. I'm going to your universities to take over a library and harass people. I don't care what movement you're involved in. Why would any country in the world allow people to come and disrupt? Now, we gave you a visa to come and study and get a degree, not to become a social activist that tears up our university campuses. And if we've given you a visa and then you decide to do that, we're going to take it away. I encourage every country to do that, by the way, because I think it's crazy to invite students into your country that are coming onto your campus and destabilizing it. We're just not going to have it. So we'll revoke your visa, and once your visa is revoked, you're illegally in the country and you have to leave. Every country in the world has a right to decide who comes in as a visitor and who doesn't. If you invite me into your home because you say, I want to come to your house for dinner, and I go to your house and I start putting mud on your couch and spray painting your kitchen, I bet you're going to kick me out. Well, we're going to do the same thing if you come into the United States as a visitor and create a ruckus for us. We don't want it. We don't want it in our country. Go back and do it in your country. But you're not going to do it in our country.
God bless Marco Rubio. I think the messaging of the Trump administration, from the president and the vice president through the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Hegseth, all the way down, everybody involved, the messaging has been great. Because you know who hears that? The kids at Columbia hear that. The would-be protesters at Harvard and at Michigan, at UCLA, they hear that. They know that the Biden regency is over. President Trump is back. He has given his team explicit direction, and it's over. The holiday from responsibility and from the conditions of entrance are over. You're going to lose your visa, and in fact, you're going to lose your green card if you're engaged in anti-American, not speech, activity. If it's not protected by the Brandenburg test, you are out. And I don't think they can say that enough. Speaking of messaging, we got some great messaging for the Marines by a Marine who happens to be the Vice President of the United States yesterday. I'll play that for you when we come back on the Hugh Hewitt Show. You might know that Vice President Vance is a Marine. After he got done with high school, before he went to The Ohio State University, he took 4 years to serve his country as a Marine Corps enlisted man, and he went down to Quantico yesterday and gave a speech to the Marines at Quantico. I want you to listen to 1 minute of it, cut number 9.
So here's the thing. Under President Trump's leadership, we believe in a very simple principle. We don't care who you are, where you came from. We don't care what skin color you are. We care about excellence, and we care about patriotism. And if you are awesome and you are a patriotic young Marine, then we are going to do everything that we can to make you the most lethal fighting force the world has ever seen, and that is what we're doing every single day. No more quotas, no more ridiculous mumbo jumbo, no more diversity trainings. We believe the real strength and the real diversity in the United States Marine Corps is that you all come from every walk of life, come from every corner of America, and you have got the strength and the purpose to win the nation's wars, and that is what the Marine Corps is going to do, just like it's done for damn near 250 years.
I think he's pretty popular with the Marines. I think the Marine Corps birthday come next November is going to have a lot of Marine Corps birthday balls with maybe a remote broadcast from the Vice President of the United States. Let me remind you, I'm in the Relief Factor Studio West. I have a Relief Factor Studio Beltway, which I'll be going back to after I'm done teaching this semester. And I have a Relief Factor Studio North where I go up to get away from the Beltway, because the Beltway is the most miserable place in the world, generally, but especially in the summer. But Relief Factor makes it possible for me to bring you this program and clips like that from Vice President Vance. And I thank him for that. I also thank him for the fact that I'm going to be able to go up the Implacable Hill tomorrow, fully recovered from the bug, and ready to get out there and have a great weekend. And I will not feel it in the minor aches and pains that come after a layoff. Not quite a complete layoff. I got a couple of 6s and a couple of 4s in, but I haven't really done a heavy duty 8, 10, or 12 in a long time. And I'm going to try and do that on Saturday. I'm going to get loosened up tomorrow. And Relief Factor is going to make that possible. Icarian curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. All you have to do is go read the science at their website. But you can also call and just send, I've heard it enough. Send me the starter pack. $19.95. That's what Hewitt said. That's what I want. Call 1-800-4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or head over to their website at relieffactor.com. Find that starter pack, $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. Stop masking your pain. Get rid of it by reducing the inflammation that it is a signal of. Try Relief Factor. Get it at relieffactor.com. Coming up next hour, Kristen Wagner. I called her up after I first read the decision from the First Circuit in Foot versus Ludlow School Committee. FOOTE versus Ludlow School Committee. And I sent her a message. I said, Kristen, this is so astonishing. She's one of the better lawyers in America, and she knows her way around the Supreme Court. She said, I'm sorry to report, it's not that astonishing. These cases are piling up all over the country. So Kristen is going to join me next hour when we get to the bottom of Foot versus Ludlow School Committee and when the petition for cert will be filed and what's going to happen. Do not miss that. I want to make sure you're aware of a story. I did mention it at the beginning of the program, but I want to read it to you. It comes from Defense Blog, and it's very well sourced. I've checked it out in a number of different places. New satellite imagery confirms the presence of U.S. Air Force B-2 Spirit stealth bombers at Diego Garcia. That's an island in the middle of nowhere in the Indian Ocean, signaling a potential shift in the American military posture in the Indo-Pacific region. Signals a lot more than that. According to commercial imagery from Planet Labs, shared by the Indo-Pacific Watch Center, 3 B-2 bombers were clearly visible on the runway at Diego Garcia on March 25. The image also shows at least 7 KC-135 Stratotanker aerial refueling aircraft nearby, supporting what analysts believe could be part of preparation for extended-range strike missions targeting Iranian nuclear infrastructure. The report further noted the possible presence of up to 4 additional bombers housed in hardened aircraft shelters at the base. If confirmed, that would bring the total number of B-2s deployed to 7, representing a sizable forward-positioned bomber force. The B-2, manufactured by Northrop Grumman, operated by the U.S. Air Force 509th Bomb Wing, is a long-range, low-observable strategic bomber capable of delivering both conventional and nuclear payloads. Its stealth profile allows it to penetrate defended airspace and conduct precision strikes against high-value targets. Diego Garcia is a key U.S. military hub located in the Indian Ocean and has long served as a strategic forward operating base for bomber missions, especially during operations in the Middle East. Its geographic location offers rapid access to potential hotspots while allowing for extended loiter time and refueling flexibility. These developments come as President Donald Trump reportedly sent a direct and firm letter to Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Axios has reported. According to that outlet, Trump gave Tehran a 2-month deadline to agree to a new nuclear agreement, warning of unspecified consequences should Iran continue advancing its nuclear program. The U.S. administration remains concerned by what intelligence officials have described as accelerated progress by Iran towards a nuclear weapons capability. Current assessments indicate Tehran is closer than ever to assembling a deliverable device, prompting increased urgency within the National Security Council and the Pentagon. Any potential U.S. military action against Iran would face complex operational requirements. Iran's nuclear sites are widely dispersed. They're hardened against conventional attacks. Military planners have long emphasized that a strike would require long-range precision strikes supported by stealth platforms like the B-2, capable of penetrating air defenses in coordination with aerial refueling assets and naval forces positioned in the region. The deployment to Diego Garcia, a base historically used during major U.S. operations in the Middle East, follows recent movements of the USS Carl Vinson Carrier Strike Group into the Arabian Sea, reinforcing U.S. strike capability in the region. The Truman Carrier Strike Force is already there. The Pentagon has not commented on the specific purpose of the deployment, the timing and capabilities of the aircraft involved. All of it suggests one thing. The time is running out on the Iranian regime. Now, it won't just be us, I don't think. I think the Israelis, who've already overflown Iran and destroyed most of, if not all of their air defenses, including the allegedly advanced S-400 air missile defense provided by Russia, they're gone. Iran made the mistake of striking Israel twice. And after the second one, Israel held back because during the Biden regency, they were wetting their pants over at the White House that Israel might actually defend itself. But after the second one, there was no holding back the Israelis. And they went and they blew up all the air defenses. So Israel is naked and afraid. Not Israel. Iran is naked and afraid of Israel and the United States. And I would not be surprised if other countries participate, including our NATO allies, including our allies in the region. Because nobody except Iran wants Iran with a nuclear weapon. We've reached this point before, and in 1994, Bill Clinton blinked. And it was right up to the edge. And then Jimmy Carter, the late Jimmy Carter, intervened without invitation, went over to the Korea Peninsula, and got worthless promises of denuclearization. And as a result, we have a nuclear power on the North Korean state that represents probably the least predictable state, but it's not suicidal. Iran is run by fanatics, theocrats, people who believe that chaos brings the hidden imam out of the well. And their theology is their own right, but that doesn't mean we want them to have a nuke. We do not want an aging fanatic like the Ayatollah Khamenei to have a nuke. So the countdown is on. It should not be a surprise. I wanted you to know the latest. I also want you to know about the Job Creators Network latest initiative. They're going to have a summit. Maybe we'll be talking about this at the summit. The Job Creators Summit is the annual Freedom Fighters Summit. It's going to be held on the May 1st and 2nd in Savannah, Georgia. I'm going. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt is going. Number of different people. Trish Regan, Sarah Carter, Mike Gallagher, Bill Bennett, bunch of the regulars. And we're going to have Governor Youngkin. We're going to have Governor Kemp. We're going to have Grover Norquist, Stephen Moore, Kellyanne Conway. Lots of people that you like to listen to, that you see and listen to on this program and other programs like it all the time. All you need to do is sign up. How do you do that? You head over to jcn2025summit.com. jcn2025summit.com. If you use the promo code SALEM, S-A-L-E-M, you will get your second ticket half off. So maybe you want to go with a spouse, maybe you want to go with a friend, maybe you want to go with a fellow believer, someone you've been in the trenches with. Maybe you want to bring someone that you want to convert to the right way of seeing the economy. Best place to do it, the Freedom Fighters Summit put on by Job Creators Network. But you can't go unless you get a reserved spot, and there aren't a lot of them left. So go now to jcn2025summit.com, promo code SALEM. Job Creators Network, all right, JCN Summit 20, I did that wrong. jcn2025summit.com with the promo code SALEM. jcn2025summit.com, promo code SALEM. And you'll like it. I'll see you there. Savannah is wonderful. I haven't been in years. Looking forward to being in Savannah. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt has never been to Savannah. And I've told her it's a beautiful city. Wonderful time. We're going to have a great time. I want to tell you about one other sponsor. The sponsor that has made a difference in the life of one of my good friends already. It's Chapter Medicare. Now, I'm going to tell you at the beginning how to get in touch with them. I'm going to tell you again at the end. #250. All you do is go to your phone, find that pound number, you know, the hashtag, the pound symbol, hit the pound symbol and the number 250. An operator will answer, and you say, Chapter Medicare, please. And when you do that, pound 250, you will get the operator. You say Chapter Medicare, and then one of their representatives will come on. They're very highly trained. And Carl tested this for me because I wanted to have some tests. And if you have an experience and you're a subtexter, send me a subtext about it. You know, you've got to be, you know, you must join Medicare at 65. You've got to have at least Part A. But you're going to get Part B as well in all likelihood. And you're probably going to get a supplemental, and you're probably going to get a supplemental or an advantage plan. And you're probably going to want to be in Medicare Part D, which is the drugs. It's a lot of choices. There are 24,000 Medicare options available. 24,000. Do you think you're ever going to figure that out on your own? There are a lot of people who are in the business of consulting. You'll see them all over the place. And they're good people. I got nothing against them. I called a couple of them when I was first getting involved with Medicare because I got that big Medicare booklet that they send you when you're 63. So you can start reading it so you might possibly understand it by the time you're 65. It's a nightmare. It's designed by people who can't read for people who can't read. And therefore it can't be read. It really is an impossible. It's not that complicated. You got to roll in Medicare A. You got to enroll in Medicare B. Then you got to pick a supplemental plan or an advantage plan that depends on whether you move around a lot, whether you're in one place and what your preferences are and who your doctors are. And you got to get a prescription drug plan that covers the prescriptions you're actually on. You can't just throw a dart, right? If you throw a dart and it doesn't cover your prescription, you're going to be out a lot of money. Here's why Chapter Medicare makes so much sense. The guy who started it, one of the guys who started it, Ari, got in touch with me through a mutual friend, the wife of a doctor that's involved in Chapter. Said, Ari would like to talk to you about advertising on your show. So I called him up. We had a long conversation. And he knew all of my frustrations with Medicare. And they're the frustrations that you all have if you're covered by Medicare. It's a nightmare system, but it doesn't have to be. Big data has arrived. At the intersection of technology and need is opportunity, and Ari and his buddy jumped on it, and now that will benefit you. You will save money. You will feel secure. You'll feel confident at the end of the day you got the best plan for you and your spouse. Go to your phone, hit pound and the number 250, and when the operator answers, ask for Chapter Medicare. I'm going to sell this hard. I'm going to sell it every day because 11,000 of you people turn 65 every day. 11,000. And every year there's an open season, and there are 11 different events that mean you can change your plan. I don't know all 11. For example, if your spouse dies, unfortunately, you can change your plan. But there are 11 different events that during the year you can change your plan. But when that open season comes around, use Chapter Medicare. Pound 250, ask for Chapter Medicare. For the past week here on the Hugh Hewitt Show, you've been hearing me discuss in detail one case, Foote versus Ludlow School Committee. It is a decision of the United States Court of Appeals for the First Circuit, which covers New England, Maine, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Puerto Rico, there's one state, Vermont. And I just couldn't believe it when I read it. And I immediately sent a message to Kristen Wagoner. Kristen is the president and CEO of Alliance Defending Freedom. She's an old friend. Alliance Defending Freedom is one of the greatest legal organizations in America. And I've been pleased to know Alan Sears and Michael Ferris and to work with Kristen for many years. But I thought this was so outrageous, I had to go to an expert. Kristen Wagoner joins me now. How are you, Kristen? Thank you for finding time for me.
Well, thanks for including me.
Kristen, would you explain to people what are the facts of this case and why the First Circuit opinion upsets me so and why it ought to upset parents?
I would be glad to. It involves a case with a sixth grade girl. She was 11 years old, and she was having trouble in middle school, as a lot of 11-year-old middle school girls do. And as she was struggling with self-image issues and just some of the things that happen during adolescence, she began to receive information that was advancing LGBT ideology, gender ideology in her school, and eventually told school officials that she wanted to be gender queer and wanted her name changed and pronouns changed and so on. The school reached out initially to her parents. Her parents expressed appropriate concern, helped her get help through counseling and other venues, professional venues, and told the school basically, thank you, we're her parents, we're getting help for her and move on, essentially. Like, we've got this covered. What ended up happening was the school then continued under its official policy to transition her behind the back of her parents, and despite their explicit request that they not do so. So it's not only an issue of parental consent, but it's active deception of parents in the public school system. And I understand why it's causing you such grief, because it's unthinkable that that would happen. But I'm telling you, Hugh, there are about 1,000 policies in 1,000 school districts right now across the United States that have very similar policies. This is happening in 37 states. And we have a number of cases, so much so that we set up an entire parental rights team because of the threat that this poses.
You know, Kristen, when you told me that in our brief exchange on the internet, I was kind of stunned because I've been teaching con law for 27 years. I teach Meyer and Pierce, and it's kind of a short course. I tell them parents controlled the education of their children, period, end of story, let's move on. That's black letter law. When I read the First Circuit's opinion, they pretended to deal with that, but they didn't really deal with it. It was a mutiny. They basically ignored it.
Yes, they did. And we know that the, cases like Myers say that perhaps a document from 1923 forward, this is the oldest fundamental liberty interest that exists. But we have consistently seen courts and government officials narrow that to the point that it's not even a second-class right anymore. And this is despite the fact that we know parents know their children best and they love their children most. We don't co-parent with the government. There are so many stories that I could tell you, Hugh, about these cases and the way that these victims are being harmed. It's deeply disturbing.
Kristen, I'm not easily shocked, but I was shocked. The First Circuit opinion here, I don't know if you want to comment on this, I would reject it from a 1L. I wouldn't let them pass legal writing. If someone said, dear reader, gentle reader, or the kind of language they use to disparagingly refer to their judicial superiors, it's really a disrespectful, but it's two rookie judges and an Obama judge, and they signed it per curiam. Why do you think it's a per curiam opinion, Kristen Wagoner?
I maybe they don't want to. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on that. This case is my hope is that it's going to go up to the U.S. Supreme Court. I think you're right to spot not only is the legal conclusion wrong, but the writing style, it's even disrespectful to the parents in the way that it's written.
Yes.
Almost from footnote 1, Hugh, you know where this is going. When they say they're going to use they and them for the child's pronouns.
Yeah. Now, let me ask, you've done a lot of litigating in front of the court. You're a very experienced constitutional litigator. Have you ever seen a court be so dismissive of the arguments of the other side? Because they really don't deal with them.
I have seen them. In fact, what I would tell you is that on the legal analysis, on the substantive due process, which just gets into the weeds a bit, they're walking through, and in some ways they're correctly reciting some of the basic tests, but their conclusion is flat out wrong.
Yep.
And we know that there's a split in the circuits. We have cases right now in the Second Circuit, heading up to the Sixth Circuit, the Third Circuit, the Fifth Circuit, the 11th Circuit, the First Circuit. I mean, it's a big deal. And I do want to just make sure we don't lose the point here that secrets harm children. They don't help them. And the science actually is completely the opposite of what this court says it is. In fact, engaging in social transition of a child locks them into becoming a lifelong patient for the rest of their lives. Whereas if you simply parent them, listen to them, talk to them, get them appropriate professional help, as these parents were doing, 80% of those kids live healthy and happy lives consistent with their biological sex.
And I want to point out the fact that the school district lied to the parents. This is, to me, the astonishing thing. If they wanted to tell the parents, we're rejecting your advice, we're taking over, they could have taken her out of the school. They could have gone to a private school. They might have been able to sue. But they lied to the parents. Is that routine, Kristen?
It is 110% routine. Hugh, they're following an official policy. We have represented many counselors and teachers and public school officials who have lost their jobs or been disciplined because they refuse to lie to parents. So even public school officials are being canned for daring to speak the truth. But let me tell you, there are a couple of stories of some of the cases we're dealing with. Amber's in Wisconsin. Amber, again, these are all middle school kids that are struggling. And her parents, she tells her parents that she thinks she's a boy. Her parents go to the school, try to work with the school, tell the school, stop treating her this way. They then again deceive the parents. Thankfully, Amber's parents pulled her from the school, and then they sued the school, and we won. Another example, though, is the Meade case. The Meade case is out of Michigan. Same thing, child struggling in school. They're working closely with school counselors, literally having regular conversations, and the school counselor is hiding it from the parents. And this has happened many, many times. And I'll just tell you, even under these policies, we have one case where a middle school girl was going on a field trip, essentially an overnight trip, and was told she needed to sleep in the bed with a boy who identified as a girl without telling her parents or getting their consent.
All right, so you're weirding me out. Can I keep you in front of this segment, Kristen? Because I want to find out the status of the Ludlow case, Foote versus Ludlow School Committee, whether or not the cert petitions are being filed. And then I want to find out about the center that you stood up at Alliance Defending Freedom, because I think our audience will want to know about this, because if one school district is lying and 10 school districts are lying, you can just be sure that hundreds are lying. And I just didn't think I would live to see a day in America where you can't trust the public school system to at least tell you the truth about what they're teaching the kids. I'll be right back, and if Kristen can stay with me, she will be as well. Alliance Defending Freedom, look them up. They are a wonderful organization. They are the ACLU of the center-right in America, or what I call the normies. Kristen Wagner is the CEO and president of Alliance Defending Freedom. She's been a guest of mine many, many times. I reached out to her after reading Foote versus Ludlow School Committee because I wanted to know, is this prevalent? And number two, what's going to happen in the case? Kristen, you told us about a new center you've stood up at Alliance Defending Freedom. If people want to help out, they can go to adflegal.org, adflegal.org. What's the center?
It's a Center for Parental Rights. At ADF, we have 5 generational wins that we work on. There are a lot of issues we can be working on in the law, but we have 3 top issues: gender identity, gender ideology, censorship, and parental rights, because those are where we see the most imminent threats in our areas. We have to get the court to again affirm the right of parents to be able to direct the upbringing and the decisions related to their children.
And Kristen, as you survey the field, you do have a good view of everything going on. From which circuit do you expect the case to get to the court, and do you expect a case like Foote to get to the court?
I do. I expect that there will be a case. I never can really predict which one. We have a circuit conflict right now, which is one of the reasons why the court would take a case, is if there's disagreement in the lower courts. That disagreement has been established as far as not only the outcome, but the way you get to a legal victory. And then, as I mentioned, there are at least 6 other circuits throughout the United States that are addressing this issue right now. I think it's also important for your listeners to realize that the Supreme Court has some cases this term and next term that are related to these issues that they've already agreed to take as well.
Now, are you optimistic that eventually 42 U.S.C. 1983 will, in fact, lie against school districts that deceive parents? Because it seems to me to be the only way to stop the deception is to make the people responsible for it pay.
I am, but I think that we have to take a much broader approach in thinking about what are the types of cases and what we need. There are legislative measures that can be put in place. We have a bill that we've proposed in Congress to ensure parental rights, but 33 states right now, Hugh, do not have protections for parents in their statutory law, and we can change that. And in addition, we know 100 jurisdictions right now have bans that prevent counselors from counseling minors who are struggling with gender confusion and helping them live at peace with their bodies. That case the Supreme Court just agreed to hear next term as well. And we have also we have 3 cases before the court this term that have been granted. And the second involves charter schools and the rights of parents to be able to have religious schools and other schools a part of the charter school program, so they have the option to pull their kids when this type of ideology is being taught and indoctrinating their children.
Now, Kristen Wagner, this is not an issue that is decided by popular opinion, but I do believe it's not a 70-30 issue. I don't think it's an 80-20 issue. I think it's a 90-10 issue, that 9 out of 10 parents would say, the school owes me full disclosure and the school must do what I tell them to do on issues of this sort. Do you agree with my assessment of popular opinion on this?
I do agree with your assessment if you have the right questions asked and parents are informed. But I think we have a lot of parents that are a bit ignorant as to what's happening in the schools, and they're also unsure. We all want to lead with compassion, right?
Yes.
And so they're confused about what this means. Everyone should be treated with compassion. But the best thing that those with gender dysphoria can have is resolution to that confusion, and that comes from truth. And the science supports that. So it's time for the courts to catch up. It's unfortunate that the Supreme Court had a couple of opportunities to deal with this issue before these policies went into place and before victims were harmed.
We are always a step behind because I don't think we ever quite imagine that things can get worse than they are. I don't often talk about this topic on the radio because, of course, parents are in driving their kids home from school and that it's an uncomfortable conversation. But I believe that the public is aware and alert and that they are not they do not lack compassion for children struggling with gender dysphoria, but they do lack compassion for schools that think they're in the driver's seat. Have you seen any schools stand up and stand with the parents?
No.
It's a shocking.
Obviously, we're dealing with the troublesome situation, but when you think about that there are 1,000 schools that have these policies, 37 states plus DC, and something like 12 million kids are falling under these policies. I will say that when we sue them, we are able to, win these victories, get these policies changed, and in addition, we have started working with some school boards who are affirmatively reaching out, but they have to have the courage to stand because, of course, they're going to be threatened if they adopt a counter policy. But you're right that, again, I want to reiterate, parents don't co-parent with schools. They know their children best and love them most, and we need to take responsibility for our children.
Well, thank you for all you're doing. Thanks to everyone at Alliance Defending Freedom. If you want to help in the fight, go to adflegal.org, adflegal.org. Thank you, Chris, and I look forward to updates as you get close to a cert grant in one of these cases. I appreciate your taking time with me today. Josh Kraushaar is the editor-in-chief of Jewish Insider, and he joins me weekly to talk about issues of importance to those who, like me, are fans of and support the State of Israel, our strategic ally in the Middle East. Josh, there was a late night last night in the Knesset. They passed a reform to the Israeli Supreme Court. Can you tell us what that reform is, and did the State of Israel dissolve today? Because you would have thought that was the end result of passing this reform.
Well, Hugh, there are a lot of similarities between Israeli politics and American politics right now. In fact, there are tensions between the separation between the judiciary and the Attorney General's office, the courts and the executive branch, and we see this in this country right now. It's happening in full steam in Israel. There's a lot of divisions over attempts at reform, attempts that people to the left of Netanyahu, the center left, think give the executive too much power. But those battles are contentious. But I think the big picture politically in Israel, Hugh, is that Netanyahu has been very, very focused on maintaining the coalition that he has, and that passed the budget in Israel this month, and trying to make sure all the parties in the coalition are aligned together. So he's been able to manage that very delicate dance, and is now targeting some issues with the courts, with the Attorney General's office. He's claiming that there's a deep state of folks in the bureaucracy in Israel that are out to get him, and that's kind of energized the right in Israel. But he's managed to keep a right-wing coalition together and survive politically.
Now, I don't pay much attention to other courts in other countries because I have enough trouble on my hands staying abreast of the United States Supreme Court and what they're doing. But the makeup of the Israeli Supreme Court, it's big, it's unwieldy, and this is the part that gets me. It's self-perpetuating because unless the representatives of the High Court and 3 of the justices sit on the Judicial Selection Committee, unless those 3 justices agree, they don't get a replacement for a vacancy. In other words, it's not only self-perpetuating, it's going to go to the left every time. And that's apparently been happening in Israel decade after decade, and people are sick of it. What was the real issue here? Is it just that the left is losing their last bastion of power?
Well, look, it is about power. I mean, I said this a lot about the debates over the judicial reform proposals, and it's about checks and balances too. And Israel doesn't have a written constitution, and a lot of folks on the center left view the courts and view the Attorney General's office as a check on the executive, and it and it does broadly speaking, favor the left of center in Israeli politics. But and it's very esoteric. This is about judicial appointments, the law that was passed last night, or I believe Thursday morning in Israel. But it's all about power. Who has the ability to appoint judges, and what's the future direction of the Israeli courts? If you ask people on the left, they think that Netanyahu is trying to consolidate power and really just snub his nose at judges or anyone who will check his influence. In fact, Netanyahu himself has recently used the term deep state in Israel, copying President Trump to demean and criticize folks in the bureaucracy that he thinks are against him. I think there actually are a lot of very, very stark similarities between the checks and balances and the balance between the executive branch and the judicial branch. We're seeing this in the United States right now with Trump and the lower courts, and you're seeing it in Israel on a different scale.
Now, Josh, if I got this right, and I tried to get it right, it's the least radical reform I've ever seen because it cannot take effect until a new Knesset is seated. So there have to be elections between now and then. And if it's so radical, does it not stand to reason that the Netanyahu coalition will be defeated? I mean, if it's that important, won't the electorate of Israel turn them out?
Well, that's a great point, Hugh. There's sort of a catch-22 with these reforms. I mean, now, look, Netanyahu, I think regularly scheduled elections in Israel are not Netanyahu is going to be in office unless the coalition collapses until 2026. Paradoxically, I think trying to push some of these reforms through, these changes through, could hurt his political standing in the interim. His numbers are not particularly strong. If there were elections taking place now, I think Netanyahu and the Likud would lose. If you look at the polls in Israel, but so there is sort of a trying to get power in one branch, but could lose some political standing going forward. Maybe and he listen to a lot of Israeli political analysts. A lot of people think he just wants to run till the end of that term, and then maybe retire and hand the reins over. He'll be.
But I'm right. The reform doesn't take effect. The earliest it takes effect is after another election. Am I right about that?
I don't want to speak without knowing for certain. I believe you're right, but I'd want to check on that.
All right. So now, given that's all that's happened, the head of Shin Bet is supposed to be out. The Supreme Court to intervene. The Attorney General is going to get a vote of no confidence this week. I expect the Supreme Court to intervene. They brought a petition, they being the left, have brought many petitions against this new law. I expect the Supreme Court to intervene. In the meantime, there's a war going on. It looks to me like Israel is winning the war. Do you feel like Israel is winning the war?
Well, I guess there are two ways of looking at it. One way is one encouraging development this week is that we've seen quite a number of Palestinians living in Gaza for the first time really starting to speak out against Hamas's rule over the territory and how much of a totalitarian regime and repressive regime it is. And if you have more of that, that's possible that maybe Hamas gets pushed out as the military pressure is reinforced from Israel as they continue to start restarting the war, abandoning the second phase, and attacking Hamas targets. There is sort of a war weariness. If you look at the Israeli public opinion polls, Hugh, like there is a sort of a war weariness in Israel. There's a little bit of confusion on what the mission is. What is the time frame for this latest operation? Certainly, if Hamas falls apart and they're ousted from power, that would be a big win for Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Quick exit question, Josh. You've seen the B2, their station at Diego Garcia. Are you expecting something? We have a minute. Do you think that's significant?
I saw Dan Scavino in the Trump the tweet. I think it was yesterday about the stealth bomber. Look, the Trump administration is fundamentally pretty hawkish and pretty committed to deterring Iran. So I think this year, I don't know if this month or in the imminent future, but they're certainly sending a message to the Iranian regime.
It's pretty hard to miss. It certainly isn't the Biden Regency anymore. Josh Kroshauer, thank you. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Follow him at Josh Kroshauer on X. Go to J Insider as well if you want to get the Jewish Insider. Baseball's back and the Angels are losing. So nothing has changed. Dwayne wants to exile the Chicago White Sox because they plunked Mike Trout with the first pitch.
They're a terrorist organization.
And I'm telling you right now, the White Sox are the worst team in baseball. And if the Angels can't beat them, that makes the Angels the worst team in baseball. Let me tell you about the best team in mortgage refinancing and in buying a home, period, or in getting a reverse mortgage, or in getting a VA loan or an FHA loan. It's andrewandtodd.com. They're a sponsor of the program. Unlike NPR, we have sponsors. We have advertisers. And Andrew and Todd have been my go-to guys for mortgages for more than 10 years. Andrew Del Rey has been my friend for 20 years. I was in a Bible study with him when I lived in California year-round for many, many years. Todd Avakian is his colleague, andrewandtodd.com. They are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. That's a bank. They actually lend you the money. They underwrite the loan. So when you go to andrewandtodd.com and you call them at 888-888-1172, 888-888-1172, they will help you get into your house. They will pre-qualify you. They will make sure you don't buy too much house, that you know how much house you can afford. They will walk you through the rates as they exist today, whether they're going up or down. You can lock in a rate. They will also put you in their tickler file so that when rates come down under Donald Trump, as they will over the course of a year or two, they will refinance you. It will be easy. It will not be painless. It's never painless, but it will be easy. And you do not want to wait because the housing market is about to break, according to Goldman Sachs. In fact, it's begun to break. The value of real estate's going up. More homes are coming back onto the market. As the Biden Regency's long tail begins to dissipate, people are coming back to normal. That means go and look for your house today, but get pre-qualified before you do with andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172. I want to remind you that we did a lot of good work today on NPR, and it's all available for you at my YouTube channel. I'd like to ask you to please subscribe to it so that you I don't put everything up on it. I put up interviews like my interview with Kristen Wagner will be up a little bit later so you can send it around to your friends about Foote v. Ludlow School Committee. I put up my interviews with everyone that matters whenever I get a newsmaker and we make news. I make sure you get it. So like and subscribe at YouTube for Hugh Hewitt. Don't forget as well, Highly Concentrated Hugh. You can get that wherever podcasts are available. And don't forget Relief Factor. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I'm feeling great. I'm on my own for 5 days, so I will be back in studio tomorrow, having gotten some miles in the morning and a long trundle ahead on Saturday, thanks to ReliefFactor.com. The only supplement I've taken for more than 20 years, the only supplement I intend to take for the rest of those days that I've got left on the air, because it works. It's Icarian and curcumin with Veratron Omega. Great science behind it. More importantly, I've got lots of experience with it. I've been taking it every day for more than a decade, I think now. And I want you to take my recommendation, give it a try. The starter pack is only $19.95. Call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4RELIEF, or go find the starter pack at their website and get it for $19.95. That's less than $1 a day at ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. Big show tomorrow. It's the Friday Weekend Review. Ben Domenech, Matt Continenti, much, much more. And, of course, the Hillsdale Dialogue with Dr. Larry Arnn. We're still talking about Winston Churchill's My Early Life and Will for many weeks. Do not miss that.